In a place called Yadoka, Kosh was walking through the area and found the entire city destroyed. He assumed that a fire might have broken out, but when he looked around, he realized that the place was safe. Suddenly, he was shocked to find a small child named Lag unconscious on the ground, and he understood that this was the letter he had to deliver. Lag began having nightmares about his mother, who was crying as people took her away, leaving him alone. He woke up in terror and, upon seeing Kosh, immediately asked who he was, feeling very scared of him. Kosh told him that he was a member of the National Postal Force, known as the B, or as people called them, letter B, since they were responsible for safely delivering important, handwritten letters across different parts of the countryside. However, this time, Kosh was surprised to find that he had to deliver a person. He realized that Lag was the one he had to transport. But Lag remained fearful and insisted that Kosh must be with the bad people who kidnapped his mother and took her toward the light. Kosh asked if he meant they had taken his mother to the capital, Akatsuki, and then reassured him that he was part of the B force and was only carrying out his mission. Kosh picked Lag up against his will and started walking toward the assigned destination. Lag kept begging him to put him down and let him go, but Kosh told him that he had to complete his task. Lag then asked where he was taking him, and Kosh replied that the address written on his delivery card was a city called Yodaka, where he was supposed to be delivered to a woman named Sabrina. Lag exclaimed that he knew this woman because she had been their neighbor in the district where he had lived with his mother. Kosh continued, telling him that the one who had requested that he be taken to Sabrina was a woman named Anna. Lag was shocked, saying that Anna was his mother, and that it was impossible for her to send him away like this. However, Kosh told him that this was the information on the card he had found with him. He then informed Lag that they would first head to a city called Campbell, as it was the first city on the map that would lead them to their final destination. Kosh said that they needed to stop and rest since night was approaching, which was when the Kamachu appeared. Lag asked what Kamachu were, and Kosh explained that they were heartless monsters that eliminated anyone in their path. They had metallic armor that regular bullets could not penetrate. Suddenly, before Kosh could finish speaking, a giant monster appeared in front of Lag. Lag pointed at it and asked Kosh if this was the Kamachu he was talking about. Kosh confirmed that this was exactly what he meant. Immediately he became tense, and his dog Rudra rushed ahead to find the Kamachu's weak spot. Lag, scared for the dog's safety, warned Kosh that his pet was in danger. Kosh told him not to worry because he and Rudra were a team, and the dog was used to helping him whenever Kamachu appeared. He explained that Rudra was now searching for the Kamachu's weak spot so that Kosh could use his weapon against it. Kosh then took out his special weapon, called the Shindango, which contained a black stone. As soon as Kosh connected with it, the stone emitted a powerful light, activating the weapon. He then successfully eliminated the Kamachu. Afterward, Kosh and Lag sat down to rest, and Kosh gave Lag some soup to drink. However, Lag disliked the food and kept complaining about it. Kosh got frustrated and told him that he had to eat, even if he didn't like it, because this was all they had at the moment. Lag retorted that Kosh couldn't scare him just by raising his voice. He then got even more annoyed when he saw Kosh taking out an apple and eating it. He angrily asked why Kosh got to eat an apple while giving him terrible food. Kosh explained that he needed to regain his strength after using his weapon because the weapon drained his energy and weakened his heart. Lag asked what would happen if Kosh kept using the weapon excessively. Kosh told him that if he overused it, the weapon would drain all of his energy, and he would disappear completely, leaving nothing behind. Lag then asked about the weapon itself, still not understanding how it worked or how it managed to defeat the Kamishu. Kosh explained that the weapon sensed the resonance of the heart of the person holding it, which was what powered it. He told Lag that the weapon contained a stone, and inside the stone were special insects that possessed unique powers. These insects detected the heart of the wielder, and once they absorbed the wielder's energy, the stone lit up, allowing the weapon to defeat the Kamachu. Lag then picked up Kosh's weapon, thinking to himself that, if he had a weapon like this, they wouldn't have been able to take his mother away from him. At that moment, the weapon sensed Lag's heart, activated, and the stone glowed. By accident, Lag fired a shot, injuring himself. Kosh suddenly saw flashes of Lag's memories and learned that Lag had lived alone with his mother for his entire life. His mother loved him dearly and always cared for him, which was why he was devastated that they had been separated. Afterward, Kosh took Lag to a safe place inside a cave, treated his wound, and left him to rest until he woke up. When Lag regained consciousness, he asked what had happened. Kosh told him everything and advised him not to worry but to stay calm. He reassured Lag that they were safe from the Kamachu in this location. However, Soon after, a large number of Kamachu surrounded the cave where Kosh and Lag were hiding. Kosh fought them all alone, exhausting himself and eventually losing consciousness. When Lag woke up again and went to check on Kosh, he was shocked by his condition. At that moment, Lag also began to see flashes of Kosh's memories. He saw Kosh walking through the market with a girl named Arya. Arya wanted to buy him a gift to celebrate his recent promotion at work. She told Kosh that he was always busy with work and distant from her. Then, Lag saw Kosh returning home, talking to his younger sister, Levitt. Kosh told her that he would be traveling soon to a new place for work. He explained that this would allow him to earn a lot of money, so they would no longer be poor, and he would finally be able to afford the treatment for her leg. Kosh regained consciousness, and his health began to improve. He took Lag, and they continued on their way toward the city of Campbell. Lag asked Kosh about the title of the Bee Master, because he had heard it while seeing his memories. Kosh told him that the Bee Master was the highest rank they could reach, a very powerful figure who never failed to deliver a letter, and whose face no one had ever seen. Lag decided to tease him, and asked about his younger sister, Levitt, saying she was pretty and that he liked her. Kosh told him that Levitt was 7 years old, the same age as Lag, meaning they were the same age. Then, he suddenly realized what Lag had just said, and was surprised that he knew about his sister. He asked Lag how he knew her, but Lag changed the subject and asked about Arya, saying that Kosh must like her. He even asked if they were together. Kosh realized that Lag had seen a part of his memories, so he had to endure Lag's teasing throughout their journey. Later, they stopped to rest for a while. Lag asked Kosh if he could deliver a letter he had written to his mother in the capital and requested that Kosh take him there to find her. Kosh told him that he couldn't do that because the capital was not a place just anyone could enter. Only those with special permits and from the upper class were allowed in. Lag kept pleading with him to find a way to take him to the capital. Kosh told him that he had misunderstood because they were not friends and could never be friends. To Kosh, Lag was just a mission he had to complete and he didn't want any trouble because of him. Lag was deeply hurt by this, so he decided to take advantage of the moment when Kosh was asleep. He stole his weapon and left alone, but Rudra followed him. Lag got lost along the way and found himself passing the same place multiple times. Suddenly, the ground beneath him collapsed, and he nearly fell, barely managing to hold on to the cliff he had been standing on. Just then, Kosh rushed to Lag and saved him before he could fall. However, they were both shocked to see that a Kamachu, stronger and different from the others, was waiting for them. They were still hanging onto the cliff, and if they fell, the Kamachu would devour them. Kosh pulled out his weapon and fired at the Kamachu, but the problem was that they were too far away, so the shot didn't hit or affect it. Kosh told Lag that they needed to get closer for the shot to land and instructed him to prepare himself because, after counting down, they would both jump and try to shoot the Kamachu before it attacked them. He told Lag that he was willing to risk his life to deliver him safely and would never allow him to get hurt. However, Lag was terrified for Kosh because he was injured, and the jump would only hurt him more. He was moved by Kosh's words and his concern for him, so he started crying. Because of Lag's tears, the power of the weapon increased drastically, and the stone in it emitted a brilliant red light. A massive surge of energy was released, destroying the Kamichu in seconds. Kosh was left in shock by what he had just witnessed and realized that Lag's eye contained an enormous power. At that moment, Lag recalled another memory of his mother, where she spoke to him about the strength within his left eye and told him that the best thing that had ever happened to her was being his mother. Kosh also remembered another memory of his younger sister, Levitt, begging him not to leave her. She told him she didn't care about money or treatment. She only wanted him to stay with her because she had no one else. After that, Kosh lost consciousness again. Lag carried him on his back and walked for days and nights until he finally brought him to the city of Campbell. When Kosh woke up, he found himself in Sabrina's house. She told him that Lag was the one who had helped him and had carried him all the way to their destination. Kosh was overjoyed because he had finally completed his mission and could now leave for the capital to continue his work. However, Sabrina was furious with him. She scolded him for not even thinking to thank the little boy who had saved his life, and for only caring about finishing his task and leaving. She then kicked him and his dog out of the house, telling him that he was free to go wherever he wanted, just as he had wished. Kosh wandered around the city, asking the townspeople for food or water, but no one in the city was willing to sell him anything. He stood at the town's port, unsure of how he would leave, until Lag came to him carrying food and water. Lag explained that the people in the city didn't like strangers, which was why no one helped him. However, Sabrina was the one who had given him the food and water to pass on to him. He told Kosh that Sabrina was a kind woman, but she just hadn't realized how difficult and harsh his job was. Kosh was overwhelmed with happiness upon seeing Lag. He hugged him and told him that he could never repay him for what he had done. He then told Lag that, from that day on, they were friends. He also promised that when he reached the capital, he would search for Lag's mother and try to find out what had happened to her. Lag was overjoyed and told Kosh that when he grew up, he wanted to become a letter B just like him. Kosh told him that, for now, he had to leave because he would likely be assigned another mission soon. However, he promised Lag that they would meet again one day. After that, Kosh bid farewell to Lag and left. From that day, 5 years passed. Lag grew older and decided to join the letter B force to reunite with Kosh, search for his mother, and finally find her. Lag's dream was finally close to coming true, as he had managed to pass all the required tests and paperwork to join the letter B force. He only had one last test to complete, and if he passed, he would officially become a letter B. However, Lag's neighbors and friends in Campbell were very sad because if he was officially accepted, he would leave them. Sabrina was also heartbroken, as she had grown attached to Lag and considered him like a son. She reminisced about the first day she met him when he knocked on her door, carrying Kosh, asking for her help. She also recalled his cheerful words and how kindly he treated her, making her feel like she had a son and filling the loneliness in her life. When the day finally came for Lag to leave, Sabrina tried to hold back her tears as she bid him farewell along with all his friends and neighbors. She thanked him for the 5 years he had spent with her, and told him that he had been more than a son to her. She assured him that she would never forget him, and that her door would always be open for him. Lag was deeply moved, and he cried as he told her that she was like a second mother to him, and that he would never forget her. He promised that he would return one day to see her again. After that, Lag said goodbye to all his friends, neighbors, and Sabrina before leaving with a letter B officer named Connor. Together, they headed toward a letter B facility. On the way, Connor asked Lag if Kosh had contacted him over the past years. Lag replied that Kosh hadn't reached out, likely because he was very busy in the capital, especially since he needed to earn a lot of money for his sister's treatment. Later, Lag and Connor arrived at the letter B facility, and Lag began familiarizing himself with the place. At that moment, he noticed a very beautiful girl with golden hair and blue eyes. He was so stunned by her beauty that he didn't know what to say. He was surprised to see her inside a letter B facility, so he asked Connor about her. Connor told him that she was also a letter. However, the problem was that her records were incomplete. According to the rules, if a letter's information was not fully documented, they wouldn't be delivered, and soon, she would be disposed of. Lag became extremely worried and asked what would happen to her. Connor reassured him, saying there was nothing to be afraid of. He only meant that they would send her away, nothing more. He then told Lag to prepare himself, because they were heading to the train station to travel to the city, where Lag would take his final test to become a letter B. However, when Lag arrived at the train station, all he could think about was the beautiful girl he had seen. He asked Connor if there was any way to help deliver her to the place she wanted to go, but Connor told him that it was impossible, because it would mean breaking the rules. Lag argued that since he wasn't officially a letter B yet, the rules didn't apply to him. He begged Connor to help him deliver the girl safely because, at one point, he had been just like her. Connor's heart softened, and he told Lag that if he bribed the station officer, he would help him too. He would also give him some papers and permits that would assist him on his journey, since he wasn't yet an official letter B. However, he warned Lag not to be late for his final test, as he could lose his chance to become a letter B. Lag jumped with joy and thanked him for his help. Without wasting any time, he rushed back to the letter B facility, took the girl, and told her that he would deliver her to the address on her card. He introduced himself and asked for her name. The girl gave him 50 different names and explained that she had no fixed name, because she was an orphan. Every place she went, she was given a different name. Lag told her that he would give her a name himself. He asked if he could call her Niche, saying it was a beautiful name that suited her. However, the girl was arrogant, a bit snobbish, and very short-tempered. The smallest things could make her mood change, so she was constantly irritated by Lag and paid him no attention. Suddenly, Lag felt a strange movement around them and got scared, thinking it was the Kamachu. However, it turned out to be just a small, weak animal, which the girl eliminated in seconds. She then laughed at Lag, calling him very weak. Lag was extremely embarrassed and felt completely humiliated. He tried to justify himself by saying he was just tired from the journey. However, he was also astonished by the girl's strength, to the point that he started wondering if she was actually a boy in disguise. His curiosity got the best of him, and he kept making strange, nonsensical comments to try and confirm if she was really a girl. But the girl understood what he was trying to do, and it was confirmed that she was, in fact, just an ordinary girl. Lag told her that she was very cute. At first, the girl was annoyed by his comment, but she eventually liked what he said. She agreed to the name he had given her, and told him that he could call her Nietzsche from now on. Lag and Nietzsche continued on their way until Lag finally delivered Nietzsche to the place she was supposed to go. He found that the location was a large circus with a massive cage inside holding many animals. A man from the circus greeted them, but he was very aggressive, which frightened Lag. Lag quickly told him that he was from the letter B force and had come to deliver his letter. The man told them to wait and then walked away, leaving them there. While waiting, Lag and Nietzsche explored the area and looked at the animals inside. Lag told Nietzsche about the work of the letter B force, explaining that every letter B must have a dingoes, a companion who assists and protects them, just like Kosh's dog, Rudra. He also told her that any strong creature could be a dingoes, and that he was eagerly waiting to officially join the letter B force so he could find out who his dingoes would be. Their conversation was interrupted when the aggressive man returned. He mistakenly thought that Lag was trying to steal his animals, so he lashed him with his whip. However, another man, also in charge of the circus, intervened and said that Lag truly seemed to be from the letter B force. He thanked him for delivering Nietzsche, telling him that his task was now complete. He handed Lag some money as payment and told him to leave. At that moment, Nietzsche said goodbye to Lag, then entered the circus with its owners, leaving him behind. Lag continued on his way, feeling sad that he had delivered Nietzsche and wouldn't see her again. Before Lag had gone too far on his journey to make it to his final test, two travelers stopped him and asked if there was really a circus nearby that would be putting on a show soon. Lag told them that there was indeed a circus not far from there. The travelers were overjoyed because they had been worried that they had traveled all this way for nothing. They were also very excited to see the circus performance, as it would feature a creature from the powerful dragon species called Maca. When Lag heard them talking about the dragon's strength, he became very worried for Nietzsche. But then, he realized from their words that she was the creature they were referring to. Due to the great similarity between her abilities and those of the dragon, the circus owners were planning to exploit her for their shows. Lag told the travelers that he had to borrow their horse. Immediately, he fled on horseback, racing back to the circus as fast as he could to rescue Nietzsche. At that moment, Nietzsche had become extremely angry at the circus owners because they were mistreating her and refusing to call her by her name. She unleashed all her strength, broke out of the cage they had locked her in, destroyed the entire circus, and escaped. When Lag arrived and saw her, he threw the money he had received from the circus owners on the ground and told them that he had come back specifically to return their payment and take Nietzsche with him. When Nietzsche saw him, she was overjoyed that he had returned for her. She told him that she hadn't liked saying goodbye and had been very upset when she had to leave him. Before they could continue their conversation, a massive Kamechu suddenly attacked them. Lag became very nervous, unsure of how to fight it, but with a single strike, Nietzsche completely immobilized the monster. However, she collapsed to the ground, injuring her head. Lag immediately grabbed his gun, and with the power of his eyes, he turned the stone in his weapon red. He then fired at the Kamechu and eliminated it. Afterward, he rushed to check on Nietzsche, terrified for her safety. He told her that she was no longer just a letter to him. Now, they could be friends. He assured her that he wouldn't leave her alone and that he would take her with him wherever he was going. Nietzsche told him that she had never planned to leave him in the first place. She also told him that she had decided to become his dingoes because he had once said that any strong creature could be a dingoes for a letter B. Since he was weak and she was stronger than him, she was the perfect dingoes for him. Lag didn't reply, simply smiling because he was so happy to see her again. Lag and Nietzsche continued on their journey until they arrived at a city called the City of Death. It was there that Lag would cross the bridge leading to the city of Yasari, where he would take his final test. Lag asked a girl from the City of Death for the date, and she told him it was the 15th of the month. Lag was relieved and happy because he still had enough time before his test, meaning he would be able to arrive on time. However, as soon as the girl realized that Lag wanted to become part of the letter B force, she became very upset. She tried not to show it and instead introduced herself to Lag and Nietzsche, telling them that her name was Nelly. She then asked Lag if he had an official permit to cross the bridge leading to Yasari. Lag assured her that he had the permit and even showed it to her. He He then asked if there was a small inn where they could stay to rest. Nelly offered to personally take them to a good place where they could spend the night. She led them to an inn, and while they were there, Lag met another guest who owned a very beautiful bird. Lag asked him about it, and the man told him that the bird's name was Harry, which he had bought from a rare animal exhibition before it closed down. The man then asked Lag about Niche, as he recognized that she was from the maca species and wanted to buy her. But Lag pretended not to understand and changed the subject before walking away. He then went to Nietzsche and told her what had happened. He asked her to leave and go live with Sabrina, as that would be the safest option for her. He told her that no matter how strong she was still a girl in the end, and he couldn't put her in danger or allow her to be his dingoes. Nietzsche was furious with him and reminded him that he had promised there would be no more goodbyes, but Lag insisted on his decision. Nietzsche became extremely upset, returned the clothes he had given her, and left. Lag then realized that his bag and permit had been stolen. He went to the inn guest who had wanted to buy Niche and asked if he had seen Nelly, the girl who had been with him. The man told him that Nelly had taken his bag and left. Lag asked why he hadn't tried to stop her. The man told him that it wasn't his job or responsibility. He said that Lag should have learned to take care of his belongings and not trust someone he barely knew so easily. He then told Lag that Nelly had headed toward the church and that if he hurried, he might still catch her. Lag ran as fast as he could to reach Nelly. When he finally found her, he demanded that she return his bag and permit, but Nelly refused. She told him that she needed the permit to reach Yasari. When Lag tried to take the permit back by force, Nelly pulled out a knife and slashed his arm. She told him that nothing could stop her plan. She then began shouting loudly, calling out to the townspeople, and telling them that the boy in front of her wanted to become a letter B. The people of the City of Death all despised the letter B force because they saw them as servants of the government, which had abandoned them to live in harsh conditions. They also resented the letter B force because one of their own, a traitor named Gibi, had come from their city. Gibi had joined the letter B force, and Nelly wanted revenge on him, believing that he was responsible for the death of her younger brother, Nilo. That was why she wanted to reach Yasari, to find Gibi and make him regret what he had done to her brother. But as she was talking, the townspeople gathered around her and stole the permit. Meanwhile, Nietzsche sensed that Lag was in trouble and quickly rushed to save him from the townspeople. However, in the end, Nelly managed to get the permit back and escaped with it. When Lag tried to chase after her, Nietzsche blocked his way and told him that she wouldn't let him pass unless he said in front of her that she was his dingoes and that he wouldn't leave her. At that moment, Nelly had already reached the bridge. Nelly wanted to cross the bridge, but she found that it had disappeared. Suddenly, the bridge guard appeared and told her that she wouldn't be able to cross because she didn't have a permit. Nelly insisted that she had a permit, but the guard told her that she wasn't the owner of the permit, so he couldn't let her pass. He then trapped her and released a massive monster on her. At that moment, Lag and Nietzsche arrived at Nelly's location, and Nietzsche tried to take down the monster. Lag used the power of his eye, which this time he was able to unleash from his body instead of his gun, and he destroyed the monster. A letter fell from Nelly, addressed to her brother, Nilo. When Lag's power made contact with the letter, he was able to see Nelly's and Nilo's memories. The letter had been written by Nilo to Gibi, allowing Lag to see Nelly's past. At that moment, it was revealed that Gibi was actually Nelly's and Nilo's older brother. Nilo had always looked up to him, considering him his role model and dreaming of becoming like him one day. However, due to their difficult circumstances, Gibi had been forced to leave them and join the letter B force, traveling to the capital. Nilo constantly wrote letters to him. Before leaving, Gibi had promised Nilo that he would take care of their sister in his absence and protect her. However, Nilo had been sick all along, and some time after Gibi left, he couldn't fight his illness any longer and passed away. Because of this, Nelly blamed Gibi for abandoning them, believing that he was responsible for their brother's death. She wanted to confront him, remind him of the brother he had forgotten, make him remember how much Nilo had loved and admired him, and ask how he could have abandoned them for his own sake. When Lag learned this, he tried to correct Nelly's perception of Gibi. He told her what he had seen and also explained that her brother had died due to his illness, which was something no one could have prevented. He told her that Gibi wasn't to blame. He also revealed to her that before Nilo passed away, he had dreamed of building a large place where children could learn. Coincidentally, after his death, such a place had been built in their city. Lag told Nelly that Gibi had not forgotten them, that he was the one who had built the place in honor of his brother. but Nelly refused to believe it. Determined to prove it to her, Lag insisted on taking her to the site. When he used his power again, he would be able to see even more memories this time, proving to her that Jibby was truly the one who had built the place. However, before they went there, they encountered the inn guest who had wanted to buy niche. Strangely, he seemed to know a lot about Lag's power. Lag asked him if he knew how he had been able to release his power from his body. The inn guest told him that the power wasn't in the gun itself. Instead, the gun was merely a vessel for the energy. The power within it was different and stronger than anything he had ever seen. He explained that Lag's power was connected to his heart and emotions. Lag had very strong emotions and could easily sense the feelings of others. That was what enhanced his power, allowing it to be released from his body. After Lag, Nietzsche, and Nelly left the inn guest, they overheard him speaking with the bridge guard. At that moment, it was revealed that the inn guest's real name was Commander Lloyd. Later, Lag took Nietzsche and Nelly to Jibby's place and tried to use his power to sense Jibby's emotions and see his memories. After multiple attempts, he was finally able to see Jibby's past. He confirmed that Jibby was indeed the one who had built the church. He had also spent a huge amount of money, and had saved up for years to fulfill his brother's dream. When Nelly learned this, she was deeply moved. Although she couldn't completely forgive Jibby, she at least let go of her resentment toward him. Her perception of the letter B force changed, and she thanked Lag for what he had done for her. She told him that he was a good person with a kind heart, and that she was sure he would succeed in his work and achieve greatness. Lag thanked her for her words and bid her farewell as he continued his journey with Nietzsche. Lag and Nietzsche finally managed to cross the bridge after the guard saw their permit, and Lag reached the city of Yasari. He thanked Nietzsche because without her he would not have been able to reach Yasari, and he told her that from now on she would truly be his dingoes, and that he would never abandon her. And he asked her if she would help him in the final entrance test or not. Then Nietzsche put on the clothes that Lag had given her as a symbol that she was his dingoes, and she told him that she would definitely help him. After that, Connor went to greet Lag himself and told him that he had been worried because he was late. Lag was very happy when he saw Connor and became excited that he could finally take the final test and join the letter B forces. So he and Connor reached the letter B building, and when Lag entered, he was very happy and, in his joy, introduced himself to everyone in a loud voice. Then the manager of the place came to him while she was complaining to Connor about the loud voice, and when Lag saw her he was surprised that it was none other than Arya, Kosh's lover. After that, Arya took Lag to introduce him to the commander of the letter B forces, and Lag was surprised that he turned out to be the inn guest from before in the City of Death. Lloyd and Arya both gave Lag the address of the place where he would take his final test, so Lag took Nietzsche and they went to the place. There, Arya introduced him to another young man named Maki and told them that both of them would take their test together. The test was a mission in which they had to deliver a set of letters to an address in a distant village, and Arya told them that their task was like the normal work they were supposed to do, so they must preserve the letters well. She also informed them that their journey would be full of dangers, so they must be prepared for it, and that there were assigned guards watching them along the way to intervene if matters got out of control, and they did not know how to act. She also told them that 22 people had failed before them, which meant that the test was difficult, so they must not underestimate it, and she asked them to choose their weapons and get ready, because the test had no fixed duration. Maki chose his weapon, but Lag said that he had his own weapon, and then the two of them set out to begin their journey. At that moment, Maki started to annoy Lag on the basis that he came from a simple area, and told him that he would not allow him to affect him and be the cause of his mission's failure. After that, each of them began his test, and Maki managed to be the first to reach the village where the letters were to be delivered, but he encountered a huge monster, and his dingoes fled and abandoned him. So Maki did not know how to act and was terrified of the monster. Meanwhile, Lag managed, with Nietzsche's help using his special power, to destroy the monster in seconds, but his letters got soiled because of the chaos that occurred in the place after the monster was destroyed. And when he and Maki reached the address of the woman who was to receive the letters, the woman was very upset with Lag because he had soiled her letters. But suddenly, the test supervisor, whose name is Zaji, came to Lag and gave the woman her real letters, and it turned out that Maki had written forged letters and deliberately soiled them and put them in Lag's pocket while taking the real letters from him. For that reason, Maki failed the test and was expelled. Meanwhile, Lag succeeded in the test with distinction, and Zaji kept praising his abilities and his power. He told him that he had defeated the monster in record time and that none of the letter B forces could do what he did. But in the middle of his speech, he told him that the highest record was set by someone named Kosh, but Kosh was no longer among the letter B forces, and that is why Lag became the highest record holder in defeating that monster. When Lag learned that Kosh was no longer a letter B, he was shocked and very upset because he had originally wanted to become a letter B in order to see him again. Lag asked Zaji how Kosh was no longer part of the letter B forces. Zaji told him that he didn't know the exact reason, but he had heard that Kosh had been close to getting promoted and reaching the position he had always dreamed of. However, he suddenly gave it all up, throwing away everything he had worked for over the years. Lag was shocked and told Zaji that this was impossible, that Kosh would never abandon the letter B force. He accused Zaji of lying and started arguing with him, so Zaji hit him and pushed him away. After that, Lag went to Connor and asked him to take him to the house of Levitt, Kosh's sister, so he could ask her about him. When they arrived, Nietzsche became very jealous of Levitt and attacked her, but Lag quickly pulled her away. He introduced himself to Levitt, and she told him that she already knew who he was because her brother had told her about him, and how much of a troublesome child he was, always crying. Lag asked her if Kosh was with her, because he had seen his gun, but Levitt told him that she hadn't known anything about Kosh for years. She told him that Kosh had indeed been expelled from the letter B forces because he had stopped completing his missions for a while and had been absent from work without permission. After getting expelled, he disappeared, and she hadn't heard anything about him since. She didn't know if he was alive or dead, and she had been living like that for about 4 years. She had lost all hope of ever seeing him again or having him return. She even suspected that he might already be dead since he had never contacted her after what happened. She also told Lag that she had learned about his expulsion from area. Lag was shocked and didn't know what to do. Levitt told him that she appreciated his visit, but she didn't want to see him again because it would only remind her of her brother. Lag said goodbye to her and left, but the entire time, he kept thinking about her and Kosh. He strongly believed that Kosh was still alive and hadn't died. He held on to hope that he would find him. He wanted to bring that same hope back to Levitt, so he turned back and decided to go to her again. He left Nietzsche alone in the middle of the road, which made her very upset and frustrated with Levitt because she was jealous of her. Levitt was sitting in her room, crying as she remembered Kosh's words to her, how he had told her that he was finally going to the capital to work there, achieve his dream of becoming the commander, and eventually find a cure for her leg. As she recalled his words, she told herself that she had never cared about being cured, walking again, or even becoming rich. All she had ever wanted was for her brother to stay by her side. Just then, Lag returned to her and told her that he would search for Kosh and do everything in his power to find him and bring him back to her. He asked her not to lose hope. Levitt told him that she was happy he had come back. Suddenly, the power in Lag's eye was activated, and when he held Kosh's gun, he began to see his memories. The first memory he saw of Kosha was from the time Kosh had told him about his sister and her illness. He had explained that their mother had died while giving birth to Levitt, and that Levitt had been born with her condition. Kosh had spent his entire life trying to find a cure for her. But the only way for him to have a chance at that was to go to the capital and climb the ranks until he became the commander. That way, he would be able to find a treatment for his sister. He had also told Lag that the work of the letter B forces wasn't just about delivering letters, but about carrying the emotions and feelings of the people along with them. The second memory Lag saw was of Kosh on one of his missions, fighting an incredibly powerful monster. After completing his mission, Kosh had returned to the letter B headquarters to meet with Lloyd and tell him that he wanted to work harder and travel to the capital as soon as possible. Lloyd had advised him to rest and not push himself too hard because he was putting his life in danger, but Kosh hadn't listened. When he left Lloyd's office, he met Arya, who also advised him to slow down. She told him that she was worried about him because he was draining his energy, and if he continued like this, he could end up killing himself. But at that moment, Kosh reassured her that he was fine, then left. In another memory Lag saw, Kosh went to meet someone he knew named Joe. Joe owned a small shop, and Kosh had come to sell his old gun and get a stronger weapon in return. Joe warned him that his new weapon would drain his energy even faster, so he needed to be careful not to harm himself. Kosh reassured him that he would be fine. After that, Joe casually asked him if he had been feeling like someone was watching him, implying that this might be the reason he got a new gun. Kosh admitted that he had felt that way. At that moment, Joe informed him about a group of rebels who called themselves the Revolutionaries. Their goal was to overthrow the government and bring reform to the country. Their plan was to hunt down every member of the letter B forces and eliminate them. Joe warned Kosh about them. Then, Lag saw Kosh's final memory, one where he was with Levitt. Kosh had asked her to give his weapon to a friend if that friend ever came to her one day. Of course, he had been referring to Lag, and that was where Kosh's memories ended. Lag was deeply moved by what he had seen and promised Levitt that he would bring Kosh back. Levitt told him that he should stop crying first, because he really was just like her brother had described him. To make him laugh, she started crying as well, and told him that she was really happy to have met him. The two of them sat and laughed together. After that, Lag left with Nietzsche and returned to the letter B headquarters. He was officially appointed as a letter B after passing the test. He also received endless praise from Zaji, the test supervisor. At that moment, Lag swore that he would carry out his duty with everything he had. He declared that his dream had now become the same as Kosh's, to rise to the highest rank and become the commander. But not just any commander. The greatest commander in the history of the letter B forces. Lag and Nietzsche returned to Levitt's house and stayed with her since they had no other place to spend the night. The next morning, Lag woke up to the sound of Nietzsche and Levitt arguing. Levitt wanted Nietzsche to brush her teeth and fix her clothes, but Nietzsche kept playing around and refused to listen. Lag got up and scolded her along with Levitt, making her follow their instructions. He then thanked Levitt for allowing them to stay with her. He told her that he hadn't had enough money to rent another place and didn't know what he would have done otherwise. Levitt told him that the house was empty anyway, and that she was happy to have someone keeping her company. She then prepared Kosh's favorite meal for them to have lunch together. Suddenly, they heard the doorbell ring and were surprised that Levitt had a visitor. Lag went to open the door and found that it was Arya. Arya was curious about Lag after hearing him declare that he would become the greatest commander in the history of the letter B forces, and that his dream was the same as Kosh's. She wanted to know what his connection to Kosh was. That's why she had come to see him. She told him that after hearing his words, she had done a lot of research until she discovered that he had been one of the letters Kosh was supposed to deliver. She then took Lag to a large hill near the sun that lit the city of Yasari, and told him that this had been her and Kosh's favorite place. She then revealed to him that 12 years ago, on a day called the Day of Fear, Kosh had lost part of his memories. Lag was shocked. At that moment, the story went back 12 years to the Day of Fear, the same day Levitt was born. Kosh's mother had suffered a difficult birth, and the woman helping deliver her had sent Arya to fetch water as quickly as possible. However, on her way, Arya suddenly noticed that the city's sun was about to go out, and the entire city was plunged into darkness. When the light returned, a government aircraft had crashed near the city, and everyone was terrified. Arya was especially frightened for Kosh, so she rushed to find him. When she saw him, Kosh was standing in shock, muttering strange things about what he had witnessed. When he returned home, he was confused as to why he couldn't remember anything about his mother. His entire memory of her had been erased. Upon learning that he now had a younger sister, he didn't react to anything. Instead, he simply picked her up and promised her that he would protect her and always keep her happy. Arya told Lag that after that day, Kosh felt an emptiness inside him due to his lost memories. That was why he wanted to fill that void by dedicating himself to caring for his sister, Levitt. Arya continued, telling Lag that at the time, the government had explained the strange incident as an experiment related to the city's sun. However, Arya never believed the government's story. She was convinced that they were hiding many secrets from them. Just then, Connor interrupted their conversation and approached Lag. He told him that Zaji had been attacked by multiple monsters while carrying out his duties and needed help. Arya granted Lag permission to go assist Zaji. Before leaving, Lag casually mentioned that he had also been born on the Day of Fear, just like Levitt. After that, he rushed off with Connor to rescue Zaji. When he arrived at the scene, he quickly and easily defeated the attacking monsters with Nietzsche's help and successfully saved Zaji. Lag and Nietzsche returned to Levitt's house, where she prepared a meal for him and bid him farewell since he had a new mission. Lag thanked her and promised that he would return home again and would never leave her no matter what happened. Then, he and Nietzsche set off to collect the letters he was assigned to deliver. On his way, he met a fellow letter B named Moke, who treated him poorly and looked down on him because he was from a simple, rural area. Moke told him that the letters he was so excited about delivering were nothing more than a bunch of written words and weren't as important as he thought. Lag became upset and told him that these letters carried people's emotions and hearts, and that they helped people convey their feelings to their loved ones. He insisted that their work was meaningful and shouldn't be belittled. However, Mok laughed at him, thinking it was ridiculous that Lag actually believed the emotions written in letters were real. He told Lag to experience the job himself and see for himself, then walked away. After that, Lag went to meet the person he was supposed to collect the letters from, a struggling writer named Vincent. Lag introduced himself to Vincent and asked him to hand over the letters he needed to deliver. Vincent told him to wait a moment and asked him not to go near his books. However, Nietzsche's pet accidentally ate one of the books, making Vincent extremely nervous, as he was supposed to send letters to his mother. But all the letters he had written were fictional stories about a perfect life he didn't actually have. In reality, he was living a very difficult and miserable life and had yet to achieve his dream of becoming a great writer. However, he was too afraid to tell his mother the truth because he didn't want her to worry about him, especially since he had left home specifically to become a well-known writer. Yet even now, he hadn't accomplished anything. Lag advised him to write the truth, no matter what, because the letters he delivered weren't just words, they were feelings. That's why he needed to express his real emotions. But despite that, Vincent still wrote a letter about a life that was completely different from the one he was actually living. Lag had no choice but to take it and start heading toward the house of Vincent's mother, Louise. When he reached the place, he asked one of the people there about her. The person told him that her house was across the bridge in front of them. The bridge was suspended between two steep cliffs and was constantly swaying left and right due to the strong winds in the area. Lag became scared and nervous about crossing it. However, since Nietzsche could fly, she easily made it across the bridge. Meanwhile, Lag had to take one step at a time. Fortunately, he spotted Louise on the other side, and she told him that there was no other house beyond the bridge except hers, so he must have come to see her. Lag introduced himself and told her that he had a letter from her son. But at that moment, a Kamachu monster suddenly appeared and attacked them, starting to destroy the bridge. Lag told Nietzsche to protect Louise, but then the letter was blown away. Lag hesitated, unsure of how to move to retrieve it. But then, he remembered Kosh's words when he had told him that in their job, they sometimes had to risk their lives to deliver their letters. Lag steeled himself, gathering his courage, and moved across the broken bridge to grab the letter. Nietzsche managed to distract the Kamachu, and Lag activated his power, destroying the monster. However, Lag's power made contact with Vincent's letter, allowing Louise to see her son's emotions and memories, as he had written the letters. At that moment, she realized that he had been lying to her all this time, that he had been living a miserable life, and had not yet achieved any of the dreams he had left her for. But at the same time, she was happy that he hadn't given up and was still trying for her sake. She told Lag that she was certain that one day her son would succeed, become a great writer, and return home. When that happened, she would be incredibly proud of him. She then thanked Lag for risking his life to deliver the letters, which made Lag feel truly happy. On their way back, Nietzsche handed Lag the book that her pet had swallowed, and as it fell, a letter written by Vincent slipped out. However, this letter had no address or recipient information, and it looked much older. Lag guessed that it was a real letter Vincent had written to explain his true situation to his mother, but had hesitated and ultimately decided not to send it. Lag told himself that he had to return this letter to Vincent. Lag returned to the letter B headquarters and learned from Lloyd and Arya that today was the day of celebration. On this day, in honor of the Empress, food and gifts were distributed to the people, especially children. Lag's mission, along with his fellow letter Bs, was to take a set of gifts and deliver them to children's homes. In this mission, the letter B's dingoes were not allowed to accompany them, which made Nietzsche very upset since she had to be separated from Lag. Arya assigned Mok to work with Lag to deliver the gifts together. Naturally, Mok was annoyed and irritated, as he disliked both the job and having to work with Lag. Additionally, they were required to wear special outfits resembling Santa Claus to bring joy to the children. Lag and Mok then went to the home of a little girl named Sonia. Sonia was a young child who lived alone in a house deep in the mountains, far from the village. When Sonia saw them, she was overjoyed by the gifts they had brought. Mok explained to her that she had one wish, which they would grant for her. Sonia wished for them to stay with her that day and have dinner together, because sharing a meal with others on a holiday made it feel more special. Naturally, both Mok and Lag agreed and had lunch with her. At that moment, Lag felt sorry for Sonia and suggested to Mok that they spend more time with her and help her if she needed anything. However, Mok refused and told him that he was annoying and always meddled in things that weren't his business. But Lag didn't pay attention to him and went outside to help Sonia cut wood. Sonia also needed to go to the market to buy household necessities, so Lag asked Mok if they could accompany her since that was what she wanted. They went to the village with Sonia, and along the way, Sonia started bombarding Mok with questions. Mok ignored her until they reached the village. At that moment, a villager approached Mok and warned him about Sonia, advising him to stay away from her. Mok didn't understand why. When they returned to Sonia's house, he began thinking about the villager's strange words, so he asked Sonia why she was living alone. Sonia told him that her parents had been killed by a Kamachu, and the villagers believed that any child whose parents were killed by a Kamachu would attract more Kamachu. That was why they feared her and refused to interact with her. Due to a strong storm, Mok and Lag had to spend the night at Sonia's house. But the next day, a Kamachu appeared in the village, terrifying the villagers, who then begged Mok and Lag for help. They quickly rushed to the village and worked together to defeat the monster. At that moment, Mok gave the villagers a lesson. He told them that Sonia was not a magnet for Kamachu, and that the monster had appeared because of the large number of gifts given out on that day. He changed the villagers' perception of Sonia, making them realize their mistake. Sonia thanked him for what he had done for her, and told them that she would never forget what they had done. She then returned home and bid them farewell. For the first time in a long while, Mok felt happy about the work he was doing. Lag set out on a new mission, tasked with delivering letters to a girl named Bess. He took the letters along with Nietzsche and headed toward her location. However, on the way, he encountered a man named Clader. Clader was a greedy and wicked man who wanted to take Bess's land and house for himself. When he learned from Lag that he was a letter B, carrying a letter for Bess, he asked to see it, claiming that he was a close friend of hers and knew her well. At that moment, Clader discovered that the letter was from Romus, Bess's lover, who had left long ago. Clader wanted to take the letter from Lag, telling him that he would deliver it himself so that Lag wouldn't have to trouble himself. However, Lag refused, saying that it was his duty to deliver the letter to Bess personally. Clader then invited Lag to rest for a while in his tent before continuing his journey to Bess's house. Lag was pleased by the offer and accepted it, but Clader tricked him, putting him to sleep and stealing the letter. He then went to Bess's house and tried to force her to sign a contract relinquishing her land and home in exchange for the letter from her beloved, whom she had longed to hear from for years. When Lag woke up and realized that the letter was gone, he panicked. Fortunately, he encountered Romus, Bess's lover, who was also on his way to her house, because he wanted to retrieve the letter he had sent. When Romus saw Lag and learned that he was the letter B who had been carrying his letter, he asked him to return it to him. However, Lag told him that he couldn't do that because the letter had been stolen by a man named Clader. As soon as Romus heard Clader's name, he immediately recognized him, remembering that he had always been after Bess's land. Fearful for his beloved, he rushed to her house. At that moment, it was revealed that Romus had promised Bess years ago that he would marry her. However, he had to leave for a while to earn money for their wedding. That short while ended up stretching much longer than expected. Feeling guilty about the time he had spent away from her, he had written her a letter to apologize. But he hesitated, afraid that she might have forgotten him and no longer cared about him, so he had wanted to retrieve the letter. When Romus arrived at Bess's house, he confronted Clader, demanding that he leave Bess alone. Lag and Nietzsche helped him, and together they managed to recover Romus's letter. However, Bess was still very upset with Romus for leaving her alone for so many years without telling her anything. She asked him to leave her and go away, but after reading the letter he had written to her, she softened and reconciled with him. With that, Lag had successfully completed another mission. Lag and Nietzsche returned to the letter B headquarters, where they were noticed by Mok and Connor, who immediately saw that Lag looked exhausted and worn out. They advised him to rest for a while, because he had been using too much of his energy on missions recently, which wasn't good for his health. Suddenly, a well-known doctor appeared in front of them, Dr. Sander. Dr. Sander was an anatomist and a biologist, commonly referred to as the corpse doctor because he was obsessed with dissection. He loved examining anything he came across, and was also responsible for controlling outbreaks and diseases in the city. When Dr. Sander saw Nietzsche's pet, he was shocked and asked them where they had found it. Lag told him that they had gotten it from a circus. The doctor laughed at them and told them that it wasn't a pet at all. It was actually a rare creature from a highly significant species that he had believed to be extinct. This was his chance to dissect it and learn more about it, so he took the creature and left. At first, Lag thought Dr. Sander was just joking and wouldn't actually harm Nietzsche's pet, but when he asked Mok and Connor about Dr. Sander, they told him that the doctor never left anything undissected. Lag became frightened and immediately took Nietzsche with him, rushing toward Dr. Sander's laboratory to rescue her pet. When they arrived, Lag begged Dr. Sander to release the creature. At the same time, Nietzsche used her strength to destroy a massive iron door inside the lab. Dr. Sander was astonished by her power. When he realized that she was from the maca species, he became interested in dissecting her as well. At that moment, Lag had no choice but to use his eye's power, destroying the cage where Nietzsche's pet was being held and taking it back. Dr. Sander was amazed that Lag could release his power through his eye. He immediately added Lag to his list of people he wanted to dissect. But just then, Mock stepped in. He pointed his weapon at Dr. Sander, intending to eliminate him because he suspected that the doctor had stolen the cats he had been taking care of to dissect them. Mock wanted revenge for what had happened to his cats. Lag tried to stop him until Mock finally learned that his cats were still alive. Dr. Sander had only taken them for examination because they had been infected with a disease, and he was trying to identify its cause. Because Lag's power was still lingering in the area from when he had tried to stop Mock, it accidentally struck one of the cages where Dr. Sander kept his animals. At that moment, they all witnessed one of Dr. Sander's memories. In the memory, he was in his laboratory dissecting an animal and instructing his assistant to find an antibiotic for the bacteria that had infected it. At that moment, Kosh arrived to visit him, delivering a letter that had been sent to him. Dr. Sander was surprised that Kosh had been able to enter the lab, as it was usually restricted to outsiders. But Kosh told him that this was his job and that he had his own ways of completing it. He handed him the letter and left. Their memory viewing was interrupted when Arya arrived and took them all back to the letter B headquarters because an important event was taking place, a party where she was scheduled to perform. After her performance, Dr. Sander approached Lag and apologized for what he had done. He admitted that, despite everything, he still had the urge to dissect Lag, Nietzsche and their pet. However, since Kosh had been his only friend, he decided to let them go. Lag and Nietzsche encountered a boy and a girl named Moose and Bonnie, who were in love with each other. However, there was a dangerous man named Frank who was obsessed with Bonnie and wanted to separate her from Moose. When Nietzsche learned about this, she wanted to help them. She used her strength to protect them from Frank and his gang, who were chasing them. However, the four of them ended up in a car that overturned because Frank had tracked them down before they could escape. At that moment, Lag and Nietzsche were shocked to discover that the two people they were helping were actually thieves. They had stolen weapons from Frank to sell them, and Frank had only been trying to retrieve what was his. He had no romantic interest in Bonnie at all. She was nothing more than a con artist. However, Bonnie quickly won Nietzsche over again, claiming that she was only stealing because she needed money to stay with her lover. Nietzsche was moved once more and decided to help her, using her strength to scare Frank into returning the stolen weapons to Bonnie. Bonnie and Moose were extremely grateful, telling Lag and Nietzsche that thanks to them, they could finally enter the capital. Lag was confused about how they could enter the capital without a permit, but Bonnie told him that as long as someone had money, they could do anything. However, Lag's conscience weighed on him. He realized that he had just helped Moose and Bonnie steal things that didn't belong to them. He decided to take a step back and took Bonnie's gun from her, telling her that they had to return what they had stolen. He insisted that they find another way to earn money so they could be together, one that was honest and didn't harm anyone. At that moment, Bonnie's expression changed completely. She told Lag that she wouldn't allow anyone to stand in her way. She then tried to take back her gun, intending to shoot him. But before she could fire, Lag activated his power, which struck Bonnie's gun. At that moment, they all saw a glimpse of Bonnie's memories, revealing the truth to Moose. Bonnie had been deceiving him all along. She had never truly loved him. She had been planning to escape to the capital to reunite with another man she loved, and Moose had only been a tool in her plan to reach her goal. When the truth was exposed, Bonnie became furious and wanted revenge on Lag. She grabbed her gun again, aiming to kill him, but Nietzsche destroyed her weapon before she could pull the trigger. Bonnie had no choice but to flee. Moose was heartbroken, devastated by the betrayal. But in the end, he thanked Lag for showing him Bonnie's true face before he was completely deceived. After that, he left, walking away on his own. The next morning, Lag and Nietzsche woke up, ready for a new mission. His task this time was to deliver a letter from someone at a cotton factory. As he read the details of his assignment, he overheard Levitt listening to a song by a famous singer named Matilda. Levitt told him that Matilda was her favorite singer, and Lag found himself enjoying her songs as they stuck in his mind. After that, he headed to the cotton factory, where he met the supervisor, Joy. Joy handed him a letter and asked him to deliver it to Matilda. Lag was shocked because he had just heard about her that very morning. Excited at the chance to meet the famous singer, he grabbed the letter and rushed off with Nietzsche to deliver it. When he handed the letter to Matilda, she immediately told him that she wasn't interested in receiving any more letters from her fans. However, Lag explained that this letter was from someone named Joy. As soon as she heard the name, she snatched the letter from him, quickly shut the door, and began reading it. The letter contained a beautifully written poem. Lag interrupted by knocking on the door and asking her to sign the receipt so he could complete his task. She did so, but before he left, she asked if there was any way she could meet Joy, because she had never seen him in person. She had only ever admired the poetry he sent her. Lag told her that he wasn't allowed to share that information, so she decided to write a letter herself and asked him to deliver it. Lag did as she requested and took her letter to Joy. Joy was overjoyed, saying in front of Lag that his plan was working perfectly. He then wrote another letter in response to Matilda and handed it to Lag. When Matilda read Joy's reply, she was thrilled because Joy expressed his desire to meet her. This made her nervous. At that moment, her manager, Blushy, appeared, rushing her to start writing a new song. However, Matilda told him that she was busy and took Lag with her because she was too anxious to meet Joy alone. Some time passed, and Matilda and Joy continued to meet every day. One day, Lag happened to pass by Matilda's house and saw Blushy carrying a large stack of letters. As Blushy was walking, he accidentally dropped one. Lag picked it up and handed it back to him. But then, he noticed that the handwriting on the letter was the same as Joy's. Confused, Lag questioned it, but Blushy told him that it wasn't Joy's handwriting, it was his own. Blushy then explained that he and Joy were friends. Joy had been infatuated with Matilda, so Blushy had helped him write the letters. Lag felt that Joy had been deceiving Matilda and that she needed to know the truth. So, he went to Matilda and handed her one of Blushy's old music records. Using his power, they both saw Blushy's memories. At that moment, Matilda finally understood everything. She realized that Blushy had loved her deeply all along, but had never confessed his feelings, because he was afraid of being rejected. At the same time, he also cared about his friend, so he had helped Joy build a relationship with her instead. Upon learning the truth, Matilda broke things off with Joy. She then told Blushy that she had admired him for a long time as well, but had always assumed that he would reject her. Finally, they both confessed their true feelings for each other. Meanwhile, Joy watched them from a distance. At first, Lag thought Joy must have been heartbroken, but to his surprise, Joy's entire plan had been to bring Blushy and Matilda together. He had orchestrated everything just for them, because he believed this was the best way to make them happy. A new mission arrived, but this time, it came directly from Commander Lloyd himself. Lag was assigned to deliver a letter to a woman named Alina in a city that was very far away. Because of the long distance, Lloyd informed him that he would be sending an escort to guide him to the place where he was supposed to deliver the letter. Lloyd told him that he would find his escort on the bridge near the river and that his escort's name was Darwin. Lag and Nietzsche headed to the bridge and waited, but the escort was running very late. Lag began asking everyone around if they had seen someone named Darwin, but no one answered him. Then, suddenly, a dog that everyone had assumed was dead stood up. Lag noticed that the dog had a tag around its neck with the name Darwin on it. The dog started making gestures, and Lag quickly understood that the dog was trying to lead him somewhere, and that this was actually his escort. So, Lag followed Darwin, and they kept walking for a long time. Eventually, they finally neared their destination, but Lag noticed that Darwin was struggling to walk, clearly exhausted. Even when Lag asked him to rest, the dog refused to stop. As they passed by a cave, a massive Kamichu appeared. Nietzsche warned Lag, but he wasn't paying attention and ended up falling off a cliff. However, Darwin managed to save him just in time. Lag activated his eye's power and destroyed the monster, but his power also hit Darwin's pendant. At that moment, Lag saw Darwin's memories and learned that Alina, the woman he was supposed to deliver the letter to, had been Darwin's owner. She had also been a letter B. One time, when Darwin was sick, Elena had left him on the bridge, telling him that she would go on her next mission alone and return soon. But after that day, he never saw her again. Years passed, and he remained in the same place, waiting for her. However, Elena had died in an accident and never returned. When Darwin found out, he refused to leave the place where she had left him. Lag was deeply moved when he learned Darwin's story. He couldn't hold back his tears. He continued walking until he finally reached the destination, Elena's grave. He placed the letter on her grave, left Darwin there, and returned to the headquarters. A few days later, a large competition was held in front of the headquarters. Lagma and Connor were participating, competing against a team called the Pigeon Flyers, a group of 3 individuals who wanted to join the letter Bs. They challenged Lag and his team to a race to prove that they would be better at delivering letters, gaining more trust from the people. The competition involved retrieving a letter from a designated location, and the first team to return the letter to the headquarters would be the winner. Each participant got into their horse-drawn carriage, ready to race. As soon as the competition started, everyone sped off as fast as they could. However, the pigeon flyers had the fastest start. Lag and Mock urged Connor, who was driving, to go faster. Connor had a plan. He pulled out some food and placed it in front of the horse to encourage it to speed up. The plan worked, and they managed to overtake the pigeon flyers. But every time they got ahead, the pigeon flyers would find a way to pass them again. The teams played pranks on each other, causing crashes and near falls from their carriages. At one point, the pigeon flyers took the lead and reached their designated letter pick up point first. Meanwhile, Lag and his team arrived at an abandoned location where only a few mischievous children were present. The children refused to hand over Lag's letter, causing him frustration. However, an elderly woman appeared, apologized on their behalf, and explained that they weren't used to strangers. She then handed Lag the letter. He immediately set off at full speed, determined to catch up to the pigeon flyers. On their way back, they discovered that the pigeon flyers had been attacked by a Kamichu. Without hesitation, they rushed to help. Rose, the girl from the pigeon flyers, took the letter and followed their plan by leaving her team behind to race toward the headquarters. However, the Kamichu also went after her. Lag quickly went to save her, and while fighting off the Kamichu, his power accidentally struck Rose. At that moment, he saw her memories. He discovered that the reason she had joined the pigeon flyers and wanted to become a letter B was to help deliver letters for poor children and families who had no way of reaching their loved ones. Her intentions were kind and pure. Lag felt sympathy for her, and because she was injured, he carried her all the way to the headquarters. Once they arrived, he let her win the race. Later, Rose sincerely thanked him, and Lag told her that it didn't matter who won. What truly mattered was ensuring that their emotions and feelings reached the people who needed them. He told her that she was the best person to carry out that mission. After a few days, Levitt kept circling around Nietzsche to finish her food as usual, but Nietzsche noticed that Lag wasn't eating. So, she made Levitt feed him instead of sticking to her and not leaving her alone. However, Levitt noticed that Lag was very sick and had a high fever. She put him in bed, placed some ice on him, and tried to treat him. But Nietzsche felt very jealous because Levitt was taking care of Lag. She tried to take care of him more than Levitt did, and whatever Levitt did, she tried to outdo her. Even when it came to cooking for Lag, she told Levitt that her food was bad and that she would cook something better. Levitt didn't pay attention to her words and told her to deliver a letter to the headquarters and request a leave for Lag. Nietzsche said she had been to the headquarters many times and knew the way well, so she took the letter and went to deliver it. However, the wind blew the letter away, and she kept flying after it until two strangers caught it and threatened Nietzsche. Since Levitt was worried about her, she had been following her. When she saw her with the two strangers, she rushed in and hit them with her chair. Then she took the letter and delivered it to the headquarters with Nietzsche, giving her advice the entire way back about not talking to strangers. But Nietzsche got very annoyed by her controlling attitude and told her she didn't need her advice. She also said she would make a better medicine for Lag than the one Levitt was making. She left and flew away, and since Levitt had left Lag alone at home, she quickly went to the pharmacy, thinking about Nietzsche and worrying about her. But she asked about the medicine first, only to find out that it had just run out. So, she decided to make the medicine herself, but the herbs she needed were very far away. She had no choice but to travel a long distance. However, on the way, her chair got stuck in the sand, and she started sinking, unable to get out. Nietzsche's pet, who was with Levitt at the time, ran off and left her. It went straight to Nietzsche and told her what had happened to Levitt. She quickly rushed to save her. Levitt thanked her and apologized, and they went home together, carrying the herbs. But when they arrived, they found Mock, Connor, and Lag, who was feeling a bit better. Mock pulled out a bottle of medicine and told them that this medicine would cure Lag instantly. It turned out that he was the one who had taken the last bottle from the pharmacy. At that moment, Levitt got furious at him and started chasing him to beat him up because of him, she had almost died. Then, Mock is seen at the weapon dealer of the letter B, asking him to repair his weapon because he wants to fight the Kamiko. The dealer tells him that he makes weapons for them not to fight the Kamicho, but to deliver messages. He says this on purpose because, at that moment, we learn that Mock hates the Kamiko deeply and enjoys hunting them because they killed his father. After his weapon is fixed, he goes on a new mission. Meanwhile, Lag is heading to the headquarters as usual, but is surprised when Konar tells him that Moke was injured by the Kamiko and is now in the hospital. They rush over to check on Moke, and when they see him wounded, they are shocked that he couldn't take down the Kamicho. However, he doesn't care about that. His only concern is that Mock is safe. After making sure he's okay, Lag returns home and eats Levitt's food, which he doesn't like. The next day, he goes back to the headquarters, and while walking with Konar, he overhears someone saying that Mok threw away the messages he was supposed to deliver to escape from the Kamiko. He is completely shocked because he knows that Mok would never do something like that, as the primary mission of the letter B is to deliver messages, even if it costs them their lives. They rush to Mok's hospital room, but they overhear Arya talking to him, sounding very upset with him for losing the messages. Mok tells her that it is his mission, and that he will retrieve the messages and deliver them to their owners. Lag, Konar, and Nietzsche are eavesdropping from behind the door, but they accidentally fall, and the door swings open. Lag tells Arya that he will retrieve the messages because Mok is injured. He sets off with Nietzsche and their pet to the Heart Desert, where the messages disappeared. The pet starts searching for the messages, until it finally finds their location. They are stuck in a high place. Nietzsche tries to grab them but fails because the object they are attached to turns out to be a massive and powerful Kamiko. It becomes very difficult for Lag to defeat it, but suddenly, Mok appears and helps him. In the middle of the fight, Lag's power accidentally affects Mok, allowing him to see his memories. He learns that when Mok was fighting the Kamicho, the messages accidentally fell from him, and he never intended to abandon them. The Kamicho escaped, and he couldn't find the messages. Lag hugs Mok and tells him that he was sure he would never abandon the messages. Then, they both fight the Kamiko together and return the messages to the headquarters. Then, Lag and the rest of his comrades from the letter B forces decide to take a break from their missions because they are extremely exhausted. They go to a clinic run by a doctor named Mana, who offers them a variety of different herbs to help them relieve fatigue, exhaustion, and even the constant stress and anxiety they experience. When she hears Lag's name, she tells him that she knows him because Kush always used to talk about him. Lag is surprised that she knows Kush, so he asks Mana how she knows him. Mana tells him that he was the one who helped her return to work, continue her research, and succeed in her life. At that moment, we go back in time and learn that Mana used to work with Dr. Sunder and conducted research on plants and herbs. However, she didn't have enough confidence in herself to believe she could succeed and achieve her dreams. One day, she met Kush by chance, and he offered to help her carry some heavy things. She thanked him and started talking to him about her research and her fear of failure. Kush told her that he was just like her. He had big dreams and ambitions, but many people always doubted he could achieve them. However, he never gave up, never lost confidence in himself, and kept moving forward. He advised her to do the same. Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Sunder, who told Mana that she needed to rest for a while and stop working because she had exhausted herself too much with work and research recently. However, Mana refused to stop and continued working on her research all night until she fell asleep from exhaustion. By accident, she knocked over a candle, causing a fire in the place she was in. When she woke up in shock from what had happened, she bumped into something, and a chemical substance spilled on her. Of course, she was immediately taken to the hospital and was saved, but she lost her sight. When Dr. Sunder learned what had happened to her, he went to visit her and asked her what she would do about her work and dreams after what had happened. Mana told him that she could no longer work after losing her sight. Dr. Sunder became very angry with her because she wanted to give up so easily, even though she could challenge her circumstances and continue her work. He left her and went back to his lab. When Kush found out what had happened, he went to talk to him and asked him to be a little more lenient with Mana because she was still under the shock of what had happened to her. He asked him to write her a letter encouraging her to get back to her work again. Dr. Sunder did so, and Kush took the letter to Mana, which became the reason she decided not to give up and return to continue working on her research. Kush and Sunder also helped Mana get a court decision allowing her to continue her research after the accident she caused. Because of them, the court grants her a 1-week deadline to prove her competence as a researcher and show that her research has real value. If she succeeds, they will allow her to continue working. However, this is a very short time for Mana to prove years of work within just a few days, leaving her unsure of what to do. At that moment, Sunder tells Kush that if a renowned scholar named White reads Mana's research and approves it, the court will take his opinion into account and recognize Mana's work as important, allowing her to continue. But there are two problems. The first is that Dr. White lives in a very distant city, and the journey there and back would take about 10 days, meaning Mana would exceed the allowed time limit. The second problem is that Dr. White is extremely difficult to please, and nothing impresses him easily, making it very hard to convince him. However, Kush doesn't care about any of that. He asks Dr. Sunder to write him a letter explaining the situation to Dr. White. He takes Mana's research and embarks on a grueling journey to the city where Dr. White lives, encountering all kinds of monsters and fighting them until he finally reaches the city. By the time he arrives, he is utterly exhausted and injured. When he reaches Dr. White's house, he collapses, and Dr. White takes him inside, tending to him until he regains consciousness. At that moment, Dr. White tells him that he read Dr. Sunder's letter as well as Mana's research. He says that he has never in his life seen anything as unscientific as what he read in Mana's work and declares that he will never approve of it. However, Kush keeps persuading him, telling him that Mana may not be entirely skilled in her work yet, but she is an ambitious person full of passion, and he is certain that she will succeed. He adds that this isn't just his opinion, it's also the opinion of Dr. Sunder, and surely Dr. White trusts Dr. Sunder's judgment. In the end, Dr. White agrees to approve Mana's research and writes a letter as proof for the court. Kush takes the letter and quickly returns to Usari, where Mana presents the evidence in court. The ruling is in Mana's favor, allowing her to resume her work. After telling Lag her story, she asks him to thank Kush if he ever sees him again, as he was the reason she got to where she is now. As they are sitting there, Dr. Sunder interrupts them and tells Lag that he has found a lead that might help them find Kush. He explains that 5 years ago, before Kush disappeared, he visited him and told him about a strange person he met in a city called Water. This mysterious person was known as Solus. At the time, Dr. Sunder didn't fully understand what problem Kush had with this person, but now he feels that Solus might know something about Kush and could lead them to him. Dr. Sunder asks Lag to deliver a letter he has written to Solus in Water City, hoping they can learn something about Kush from it. Immediately, Lag takes Nietzsche and Konar and heads toward Water City. When they arrive at the city square, they see a crowd gathered, listening to a speech by a woman named Sarah, who is standing with her husband Hand. Strangely, Hand is a giant with claws resembling those of an animal. At that moment, Sarah tells the people that the government conducted experiments on her husband, which caused his current appearance. She warns them about the government and what they are secretly doing behind their backs. In her hand, she holds a stone similar to those found in the weapons of the letter B forces, which they use as a power source to fight monsters. When Lag sees the stone, he suddenly remembers that it is the same one that was on Kush's gun. Lag shouts at the top of his voice, asking her why she has Kush's stone, but when Sarah realizes that he is from the letter B forces, she orders the people to attack him because he works for the government. Lag, Nietzsche, and Konar start running from the people chasing them. Nietzsche decides to protect them and charges at the crowd, but Hand manages to stop her. At that moment, Sarah's followers capture Nietzsche and Konar. Lag gets separated from them, but is rescued by a girl named Anne. She tells him that if he wants to leave the city safely, he must listen to her. She then takes him to a secret place and tells him that he must take the letters stored there and deliver them. She explains that these letters were written by the city's people long ago, but the government punished them by forbidding the letter B forces from taking and delivering them to their recipients. Lag asks her why no one from the city tried to deliver the letters themselves. Anne tells him that someone did try, but the Kimiko killed him. It turns out that this person was Anne's father. Lag promises her that he will take the letters and deliver them, even though there are a huge number of them. However, before that, he must first rescue his friends. Suddenly, a Kimiko appears in the city, and Lag rushes out to confront it. Meanwhile, Hand personally releases Konar and Nietzsche because he opposes Sarah's actions and refuses to support the lies she uses to manipulate people. Konar then helps Lag fight the Kamicho, while Han wants to expose everything in front of the people and put an end to Sarah's control over them. Moke also arrives and tells them that he came specifically to help them and take down the Kamicho. At that moment, Lag remembers what Konar said about Moke, that Moke's father was killed by the Kamicho, which was the reason he joined the letter B forces. Their missions allowed him to eliminate large numbers of Kimiko, and that was why Moke never cared about delivering letters or the true purpose of the letter B. All that mattered to him, and what he enjoyed was hunting, seeking revenge for his father. Then, Moke comes up with a plan to defeat the Kamicho, which is bigger and stronger than any they have faced before. Taking it down is extremely difficult, so they all work together to fight it. However, their mission becomes even harder, as the Kamicho's strength causes the ground to collapse, and the letters they were carrying nearly fall. Lag rushes to catch them, but the Kimiko traps Anne with its many arms. Moke tries to save her and pulls out his gun to shoot it. When he does, the gun's power activates, and they begin to see memories. Memories of Anne with her father, and how much she loved and was attached to him. As Hand also steps in to help, they start seeing memories from his life as well. At that moment, they learn that Hand was once an ordinary child who met Sarah when they were young. They were constantly beaten by the person who took care of them, and because they were both alone, they became very close friends. Eventually, they fell in love. However, the person who raised them wanted to sell Sarah. At that moment, Han made an offer. He agreed to be turned into a monster and have claws implanted so he could be used in shows where people would pay to watch him, in exchange for Sarah not being sold and staying with them. This meant that Sarah had lied to the people. The government had nothing to do with what happened to Hand. Meanwhile, Mok's shot does not hit the Kimiko or manage to take it down. The Kimiko grabs Mok, and when Lag sees this, he unleashes his power and successfully defeats the Kimiko. But at that moment, he sees the Kimiko's memories, and in them, he sees Kush. Lag realizes that the Kimiko had attacked Kush before. At that moment, they learn that years ago, Kush was on a mission in Water City when he encountered a Kimiko and managed to defeat it. Right after, a strange man appeared before him, introduced himself, and told him that he was part of an organization called Reverse. This man was the same person Dr. Sunder had told Lag about, Sullus. Sullus told Kush that he had been watching him for years, waiting for the moment they would meet so he could make him join them. Kush asked him if the Reverse organization was part of the rebels trying to fight against the government. Sullus told him that his organization's goal was for the greater good, and that if Kush agreed to join them, he would soon understand everything. He also told him that he knew the real reason behind his sister's illness, and that the government he was defending was responsible for it. Furthermore, he said that he might even have a cure for Levitt's illness. He then told Kush that he would be waiting for him to join them soon before leaving. Lag feels defeated because his mission has failed. He was unable to meet Sullus or find any new clue that could lead him to Kush. So, he gathers his friends to return to Usari. However, on the way back, Lag experiences the biggest shock of his life when he finds Kush standing right in front of him. Kush takes the letter from his hands, and at the same time, Radra, his dingo, runs over to Nietzsche and starts fighting with her, seeing her as an irresponsible dingo who does not properly protect her owner. Overwhelmed with joy at finding Kush, Lag bursts into tears. However, Kush does not acknowledge him and treats him as if he doesn't know him at all. Lag desperately tries to remind him of who he is, but Kush tells him that he is mistaken. He is not the person Lag is looking for. He says that his name is Honor, then turns and walks away, leaving Lag completely stunned.